Hello, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're playing Darkness. To be honest, I don't remember the last time I played Darkness. I even posted a Darkness video. I think it's been like maybe early 6.0, maybe even like 5.0 to be honest. Not having Spike is so weird. There's a lot of keybind changes that I have to do. I'm not, like in this video, I'm not completely adjusted. I would say I'm adjusted now. These aren't my final keybinds that I actually use, and this match actually ends up being a wonderful match for, you know, AoE, which is part of what Darkness can kinda excel at. It's not like super amazing at, but it's not terrible, right? In this match we do end up doing top damage, but it's just mostly because I don't need to constantly use GCDs or GCDs to like protect people slash how to put it, like constantly try to get back into combat and fight people. Since combat just pretty much never drops, it ends up being a straightforward match where we're just going at it pretty much the whole time, which is nice. Typically any class that you get like permanent uptime on, you're going to do a lot of damage, but it's definitely nice to see that, you know, hey, in AoE situations, Deception can do something. Or not Deception, Darkness can do something. Obviously I'm not playing it optimally at all because I don't remember like almost anything about it, but after trying some things, changing talents up, I think this is what I end up liking the most, and ultimately, realistically, with all of them stacking up as much as they are, I would do 10 times the damage that I'm currently doing if I used Decorating Bolts. A lot more. I'm also using Overwhelm Offense because I didn't really know what else to run. And I'm using a 3% damage increase, Implant, and Second Wind. Taking the healing talents, so when I actually do damage, it heals me. And all the time in my taunting on cooldown because I am taking a lot of damage, but also at the same time sometimes I'm taking single target damage, meaning that people are actually actively hitting me, and specifically me. So more so the layout of like Darkness, at least the Darkness's strengths versus the other two tanks, is that you can basically nerf the enemy's damage more than the other two. And what I mean by that is that when it comes to obviously taunt uptime, you can keep taunts up for a really long time because you can take the shock increase duration on taunt, even though it's not realistically that great to take in like a real match, but it is something that, you know, you could do an 8v8 just fine. You can pretty much keep perma-taunt on somebody, which is really cool. You basically need to not be interrupted in a 5-second window, though if you get stunned and not immediately re-stunned, you can pretty much maintain the taunt uptime, which is really cool. Then you also have deflection AoE. This reduces damage for everybody that's in your deflection AoE. That's generally like one of the best utilities in the game for team mitigation outside of like the it's a dome on Sniper, I can't remember what it's called. It's like Imperial Bubble or something, I have no idea. It's something like that. That's probably like the only other ability that compares. And then you compare that with Taunt, so you end up getting a lot of damage reduction and just generally a lot of protection from that combo in general. And in this situation, I can be guarding this Jug. This Jug actually ends up taking a crap ton of damage, but after watching him play, I realized that it may not be in my best play to actually, like, you know, guard him, because he seems to be all over, and half the time he's not even looking like at his target. So that makes me think that he might not be too on his toes with his defensives, and if he's not actively leaping on cooldown and whatnot, it does put me in a vulnerable state where he'll get me killed, and I just personally choose my life over his. If you look what I'm doing, then obviously you understand why, but I can support him a lot more than what I did. I was just being greedy and not confident in my durability. I didn't know that we were going to have the healers. I just randomly joined this match, and then we had like 30 seconds before it started, and apparently we had a healer. That was great. I think each team has two, or yeah, I think each team has two. I don't know skill level of them, obviously, so I go in here and assume, like, hey, I'm actually taking damage, so I'm not going to try too hard to, like, guard swap and help them. I just left it on the healer, which is relatively close to me for the entire match, and in this first round you'll see that there is a lot of fighting that happens where none of us are really dying. I think the judge died once or twice, but in the attack round it's not really situations where we die. So guard swapping is not as important, but if you're wanting to play a tank, guard swapping is really important, especially if you have somebody that you can guard. Like, I didn't know anybody in this match outside of the healer, so I couldn't justify giving guard to somebody that may not give like proper use of it. So sometimes when you have to sit there and think when you're playing this tank, this is a selfish way to do it. I don't always recommend it. If you're playing more mitigation or you actually want to be more of a team player, you can guard people. Just know that you're going to sacrifice your life pool for them, and if they don't pop defenses and don't play accordingly to mitigate damage, they're going to get you killed at least 2 times faster. So it's something definitely to think about, especially when you're playing a weaker tank that doesn't have much self-sustain. Though the percent heal definitely helps a little bit, but it is something to think about that is always going to be in your mind. I am taking the AoE root melee ability. I keep forgetting that I have it because, you know, I haven't played it in so long. But it's actually really good. Between AoE deprecating faults into the AoE, you can kind of like keep people permanently stacked. Not like permanently, but you know, you can relatively keep them like stuck and slowed and not able to spread out too much, which is really nice, especially with pyro PT or something like that. You really have a lot of AoE slow / team control to keep people in the same spot. Definitely not invincible at all by any means. Yellow damage really hurts, engineering really hurts. Really anything hurts if they're directly attacking you. You're really good at lowering damage rather than mitigating it yourself. And even if you do go mitigation, really the only mitigation I would recommend is to run the relics over the damage relics. That'll get you more actual tankiness versus running defensive stats, unless you're playing against white damage, and then defense chance is really good. So I believe this is pretty much the end of round 1. I already know it's going to be like an interesting game. I don't have any idea how much damage I'm doing here, and I realize that, you know, I'm getting CC quite a bit. You're going to see a lot more CC here soon. Alright, well, I'm not getting my stacks for different bolts, but even though I'm not getting them, it doesn't really matter. And at this point, I didn't remember that the stacks don't actually increase the damage, it just makes it immune to interrupt. So I should be using the ability more often. And I'm just not doing that because I thought it increased damage. I've just not adjusted. Plus, I was playing different talents. This one has more force regen than the other one. So you're actually able to constantly spam the ability, whereas previously, if you're running the other build like I was, you would not be able to spam it. You'd be out of energy relatively quickly. This was not the situation. And here, we kind of keep people here. This Jug, I feel so bad for him, because I, like, looking back at it, you know, he's getting destroyed, and like, I kind of want to help him, but also at the same time, I know if I guard him, I probably get us killed, and if I'm killed, they're all spread out. There's no more AoE. I'm not keeping the pre-made on the enemy team in one spot, and that means people that are on the doors are going to have to, you know, deal with a lot of people. And chances are, it's not going to be as easy for us to defend. I am obviously happy to do this, of course, but there is upsides for my team objectively. For me doing this, I'm keeping a lot of people here, preventing them from playing objectives, but also at the same time, just making it fun for me too. At the same time, I'm enjoying this because, you know, 1vx is something I rather enjoy. And if I can keep as many people here and, you know, use AoE deprecating faults, it looks pretty cool with my screen. This is the first game I actually played this day, so I was like still adjusting. As we're not adjusted to Star Wars frame rate, I usually play BPO. Whenever I'm playing like another game, I get like 200 frames on remastered on that game, so it's a drastic difference from going to that game to this game. So it does, like, getting used to FPS, it does mess with my eyes. That's definitely something to do with like stutters and whatnot, but once you get used to the game, and by the way, I recommend downloading the DirectX 9 files if you've not. TLDR of that is that if you've not done it, basically DirectX emulates the old files, and emulation is not perfect, so therefore you actually get FPS gain, especially with Enhanced Shadows. I play on Ultra, so to quickly explain another thing is that this game is CPU bound, and I can't get more FPS without hitting a better CPU or clocking further. So this means that I'm actually able to increase my not my GPU, but my like graphics settings because my graphics card is basically already bottlenecked by my CPU. So realistically, lowering my settings is nothing because my GPU is not even working anyway. Which is a weird thing, This game is relatively old, and still, to this day, it's CPU bottleneck with even newer CPUs out there. It's crazy. We don't expect this game to be crazy. With GCDs being as long as they are, I feel like 30-40 FPS is pretty decent to very playable. Obviously more would be better, and obviously intervening is the more competitive aspect of the game. You do have more frame rate, so it's a little bit better, but ultimately, because of the GCD, it's the main thing that saves this game. If this game had a lower GCD, FPS issue would be way worse than what it is. I'm not saying like FPS would be lower, but I'm saying rather having low FPS would be a bigger issue than what it currently is. And for those that want to play at Darkness, obviously, you should guard swap. Again, as I said before, if you have somebody that'll actually use their defensives and play accordingly, give them guard. It will just make things a lot easier. If you are actively taking damage and people are actively tumbling you or hitting you, taunting is not always the best thing to do. Obviously, you can maybe taunt one person that it doesn't really matter if nobody else is there to taunt for you. You can get some healing out of that. Also, with AoE taunt, you can get a respectable amount of percent healing in AoE when you use AoE abilities. So again, keep in mind, I am taking the percent heal, and I'm also taking the other talent that reduces the cooldown on your AoE taunt. Can't remember what it's called, but they synergize really well. And overall, you don't really feel the loss of the other ones, and the ability to spam your abilities a little bit more is kind of nice. This does put you in a weird position where a lot of your damage is completely reliant on AoE. You do have a respectable amount of slows though, which is already a thing for Darkness in general, but that is a nice thing, and you get a lot of AoE slow because AoE different volts. So it's interesting overall. So tempering volts is going to be your main damage, especially when it's in AoE. You're going to be able to AoE slow people. Also, you have Wither. Wither is another important ability. And Shock. These are your three main abilities. Most of your damage is going to come from AoE tempering volts. However, Discharge is also another important AoE that applies accuracy debuff to everybody. Even if it's not lit up and you've got people that are maybe unbuffed, like they haven't, or undebuffed, like you haven't debuffed them yet, it is good to even use it just to make sure that they get the accuracy debuff on them. And it's decent damage even if it's not procced, but don't make a habit of using it on cooldown. You'd be much better at using different volts on cooldown even without stacks. In this situation, I'm just trying to pull people to get AoE different volts, but a lot of knockbacks in general, going on, so it's whatever. It's not anything crazy. There's two tanks here. Pretty much everybody that I could hit here is guarded or about to get guard. It's very easy to guard against only one Darkness tank because your damage is channeled for the most part when it comes to different volts, so you just throw a guard on whoever. I mean, it doesn't really matter because I'm hitting everybody though, but it does reduce some damage. Other than that, if you want to learn more about defensive management, I do have a video completely dedicated to that, but to give a quick TLDR, in situations where there's a lot of people there and you have a decent amount of players with you, in your like vicinity, or enemy players, even like ally players, when you have a lot of people that are melee DPS, so for example AP, PT, Carnage Marauder, Fury Marauder, all those like good high burst damage melees or even like range, if you can stay on top of them and prevent them from leaving you, during your deflection AoE, you're able to reduce damage by a tremendous amount. So deflection is more than just a defense chance defensive for you. It's a team mitigation ability that allows you to lower the damage of other players tremendously. It is really brutal to deal with if you don't know anything about it. So for example, you're playing into a pyro and you're able to get in there for deflection. It's a lot of damage reduction. Excuse what I say is we are literally, there's two tanks in another team and I'm a tank, and we're just kind of hitting each other for the entire game. So we're both indirectly tunneling each other. Other than that, if you guys have any questions about Darkness, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to help.